Prism of possibilities. The thought of having a conversation that starts with this theme of prism of possibilities in itself gives so many perspectives. If I recollect years back in the physics lab when we were first given the prism, and we used to make those little graphs and colors and things like that, and you realized that there were so many possibilities. The direction of the light, the positioning of the prism, your perspective. And therein lies such an important learning, isn't it so? That it depends on the self what the possibilities are. The self. And the self constantly goes through pushes, pulls, vectors from so many directions. If I go back to my school years, I did not know that psychology existed as a branch. I'm talking about late 80s. When I joined medical college, most of my years went without even understanding that psychiatry was one of the branches I could pick in the long run. In mid-90s, when I first talked about the fact that I want to take psychiatry as a branch, you can well imagine the reactions people would have given me back then. In fact, when I asked for my branch, the guide, the interviewer, asked me that, are you sure you won't leave it? You are getting other options. Those were the thoughts. And if you ask me, if I have to reflect on my life, if there is one decision which completely changed who I am, was the decision of taking psychiatry as a branch. What was me before psychiatry, me after psychiatry, the self became different. The self became so real. A few weeks back, I was asking and having a conversation with my teacher, and I asked him, in these times, how does one maintain a sense of equilibrium, more importantly ethics? And he told me something very, very important. If who you are and what you portray going to be similar, as close to each other, you will not struggle with yourself and you will not have ethical dilemmas. And that brought in my mind how our present day self has been impacted with the progress of humankind. And yes, I will bring in the perspective of COVID as well, because I see COVID as a learning opportunity life has offered us. And that's the prism of possibility, isn't it? Either I look at purely as a difficult moment, or I look at it as a learning moment, because it opens up options of what I can do in my life. Even pre-COVID, my conversations with young people, I realized that their real self was taking a bit of a beating and sometimes a back seat, because there were so many other elements of their self. The self, especially because of the digital interface. What the digital interface did, I click a picture, I show you a picture. Now all you see is a picture, more often than not with filters, and I am putting this picture for you to see based on my understanding of what you would like. Which means my focus is on views, likes, shares, and not on me. So if I feel a particular thing is in, we call them trends, and trends also keep changing hourly nowadays, isn't it so, in social media? But we do that. And it's that trend component starts driving me. What have we seen? We've seen people living in congested, densely populated urban spaces experiencing loneliness. How is it possible? How would it be possible that you are living with so many people where personal space may be difficult, yet you feel lonely? We talk about lack of meaningful relationships even when we have hundreds and hundreds of people on our social media feed. You may have 1,000, 2,000 lakhs of people on your page, but how many of them are truly connected to you? So in spite of the advances of the digital interface, in spite of social media, in spite of at a click of a button, we can communicate with anybody, we continue to lose our own individuality and our own self in the day-to-day living. And that's something we need to think about. That's where COVID comes in the picture. Ask yourself, what did COVID teach us? It taught us we are adaptable. And we did adapt. Today, you and I are having this conversation online. We adapted. You didn't drop the idea of a conversation. You went ahead and found a solution. We had online teaching classes. We saw how we adapted to work from home as now we go to a hybrid and hoping that we'll start regular interactions. All of that kept on happening while we continued to fight something that we weren't aware of. We are still in a learning process, but throughout that learning, we kept on working. What COVID also taught us, besides adaptability, was deep down, closer to our real self, is the need to belong, need to connect. And that belongingness found its own meaning during COVID. You spent more times with people who mattered. You got reconnected to your alumni. You saw neighbors reaching out to each other. You saw complete strangers, Samaritans, helping each other. All of that was a unique connectedness of our real selves. Because during the time of crisis, what you portrayed on the digital self stopped having a meaning. How many followers you had stopped having a meaning. What became meaningful was, do you have the connect? Do you have someone who you can talk to, whom you can interact with? It is this aspect of COVID that I want all of us to understand. We also learned that we have a resilience within. We also learned that when it comes down to it, we go outside our abilities. The kind of work that frontline workers did, remarkable learnings for generations to come. So let's look at the prism of possibility, reinvent ourselves, learn from this COVID experience. That's the way forward for us. Humankind needs to be a better version of itself in the post-COVID era. Sometimes I wonder, would life have been similar if smartphones would have been there way back when I was a school student? I don't think so. Those were lovely times. To actually pass times, you needed friends and family. You had hobbies. You had so much to do, and yet you thought there was little time. And imagine from there to here, when there is so many distractions and so much to do, that we still end up finding boredom and we still end up finding loneliness, even when the sheer stimulation of the social digital interface is so much. In fact, I feel that in absence of this, the overall development of the self was very different. And I think that's the key to reinventing yourself. Why do you reinvent yourself? Because if you don't reinvent yourself, evolution stops. How about seeing and understanding that COVID is an aspect of evolution, that humankind needs to reinvent its own self? Self-word is the key here.
Recording stopped.
young people,
Recording in progress.
self-word is the key here. Why? Because it is in your control, which means you have the power. Like that prism I talked about, where you place it, how do you see it, what angle, what light, it's you deciding, you putting it there. So today, how about reflect on this? Let's reflect. To change something, you need to first accept what is not going on fine. The real self is who I am, who you are. The digital or the portrait self is what I am showing you. Now, what are the vectors acting on me? Conformity, peer, trend, likes. A lot of these aspects make me portray something that is not true to me. So suddenly, me gets split into parts. One me is the real self, other me is the portrait self. And that's when my confusions of the self start happening. And I find constantly in a struggle, who is me here? What is I here? Who am I? And that self gets more and more unclear and you lose your uniqueness. And that's something we need to accept. Yes, we feel lonely in spite of so many digital advances. Yes, we feel disconnected even when there are connections all around us. And yes, the digital self is playing a part on how we look at our own selves. So that you accept and then you now reinvent. How do you reinvent? You start with your own self. Value your own self. If you don't value your own self, somebody else is not going to come and value it for you. You value yourself. One thing. Second, you prioritize meaningfulness in everything in your life. Fun is meaningful. Fun is also meaningful. Joy is also meaningful. It brings meaning to life. So when I say become meaningful, that does not mean that, oh, have just one serious outlook towards life and that's the only way to look at it. No, you enjoy. But you bring meaningfulness. Meaningfulness in everything about you. Meaningfulness in your relationships. Invest in relationships which are meaningful. 3 less posts won't matter. 2 less selfies won't matter. But that one conversation with your friend or family member matters. So you invest in meaningful relationships. You invest in meaningful tasks. You invest in meaningful advocacy. Meaningfulness in everything in your life. And the third component, as you reinvent yourself, see your mental health as your fundamental right and need. Well-being has to be prioritized. Our mental health has to be a priority for us. The moment I value my mental health, you value your mental health, we as a community value our mental health, society becomes better. Because when we value our mental health, it instills us with positivity. It instills us with optimism. So in the prism of possibilities, we get hope. We get resilience. We learn skills. And we value happiness. So if you want to reinvent yourself, let meaningfulness, joy, purpose, happiness of life, well-being of the society and your own self become the key component. But all of that can happen only if you value yourself. You value your individuality. You ask a batter to bat and a bowler to bowl. You ask the goalkeeper to keep and a striker to take penalty. They're individual skills, individual abilities. You don't tell them, this is in trend, why don't you start bowling even though you are a batter? That's not how you go about in life. Your uniqueness, that's yourself. So how about we evolve again? We learn, especially from our COVID experience. And let's reinvent the self. How can you do that? One, your social self. Let your social self be true to your real self. Speak up, unmute yourself, share your thoughts, express yourself, express your feelings, invest in meaningful relationships, spend quality time for things and activities and people that matter. Develop that sense of social responsibility. Yes, be on social media, but use it for advocacy, for positivity and connectedness. And yes, you can have a little bit of fun as well, but within boundaries of dignity and positivity. So that's one part of your new self, your social self, which is going to reflect your true self. Second aspect of yourself, become purposeful. Whatever we do, there needs to be a purpose. We have a limited time. Purpose. Purpose should define us. But that purpose should be based on your true self. What you think you are, what you want to see you are, what you want to see contribute, and the movement of your life that contributes to people. That's what you do. Third, be mindful. Be in the moment. Be mindful. A lot of times in modern day distractions and the hustle and bustle and the multiple things, we've stopped being mindful and enjoying each little moment. Life gives you so many opportunities to be able to enjoy, feel positive, feel alive. You need to be mindful to have those experiences, because it is these experiences in your tough times, and tough times will come and keep coming at us, give you the power, the resilience, the optimism, the hope that yes, I have it in me. I shall be able to come over the adversities. And the fourth aspect of self, values. Means matter. If means are value based, ends will always be on your side. But to say that means don't matter and end matters is not true. That's the worst thing humankind can do to itself. So in the prism of possibilities, all your possibilities lie within yourself. Now it's up to you. Do you want to redefine yourself?